afternoon, everyone. Hello, Business Blogs.
Hi. Good morning.
We are joined today by Mary Gregory, which is exciting. I'm going to introduce you to Mary in a minute. So today's show, 30 minutes. We're going to work through very fast. It's a good all-action-packed show today. And we're going to start off talking about our week, and then we're going to talk to Mary, and then we're going to finish with a great tip for everybody. Each one of us are going to give you a tip for the week. We hope it's high energy. We hope you're loving it. Thank you to everyone for the amazing way that they're commenting and sharing and encouraging and applying to be a guest. It's getting quite exciting. Is this our sixth show? It is. Our sixth show. It's very exciting. So, and we've been through, all of us, a lot again this week. Loads of things we can share, but, you know, collectively as a country and across the world, there's all sorts of sort of negative stuff if you tune into the media. So we're going to keep it as positive as possible, which is exciting obviously we're very real. We like to say we're very real and raw. So Mary Gregory, it's very exciting to see her here and join us. And as you know, we don't have to be blonde to be on this show, but it just so happens that Mary is blonde.
If the truth be told, I'm a redhead, but it's his bottle blonde.
We forced Mary to bleach her hair before the show. So if you do want to be a guest, you do not have to be blonde or female. So remember that. And before I talk to Mary, ladies, what sort of week have you had? Sam, while you gurgle down your drink. That's all right. What's your week been? Any messages from this week?
Well, we're trying to keep it high energy, so I'm going to do my best because everyone is telling me at the minute they're just flat. That COVID war we spoke about last week has just got bigger and bigger and wider. Caroline, you can help us with this, but it feels like everybody is flat. But do you know what? This morning I was feeling a bit flat until I logged on and saw you guys. So it's all about finding your network of support, finding those people that make you laugh, that are positive, that you connect with, that you share the same vibe with. And that's what I'm loving about this week, really, really connecting with people.
Yeah, I love that. And you cheered me up when I saw you. And I love the fact we've got two ladies wearing red up there. And I'm very colourful today. I'm usually in black, as you know. So, and Caroline, what about yourself? How's this week?
Yeah, I think it's a week where a lot of my clients are talking about resilience and how to draw on reserves. Also find the love in your business. Find the thing that you absolutely love in your business and focus on that, because we need to remember what we do love about our business.
Yeah.
And how to serve our clients. So it's hard. Get your love going in the business again.
Yeah, be heart-centered. You're absolutely right. So much nicer energy, isn't it? And sometimes up in our heads. And Kim, how's your week gone?
Yeah, it's been good, thanks. Albeit, and we were chatting about this a bit ago, weren't we? It's been a real eye-opener to me this week, seeing how many ex-colleagues and friends and connections that I've seen on LinkedIn who are being really, really brave and sharing about how they've had to overcome anxiety or mental challenges at a really senior level. And it kind of made me think about what we talked about last week about the LinkedIn research showing that leading right now is proving to be the most difficult for leaders the world over. And so I guess for me, it's how do we make sure, and Sam, it kind of probably goes to your point, how do we really make sure that we're finding the right support, that we've got those people that are going to G us up, cheer us on, give us that safe space within which we can challenge our thinking, share how we're feeling, and help us find focus.
Yeah, I like that. Now, focus, that's really interesting, because this week that's been my challenge. I've actually had quite an overwhelming week, and I preach all the time self-care and look after emotional and mental well-being. And this week I haven't, and I've been really overwhelmed. And I had a great chat with a new client yesterday who's got on his business card 3 words that say when he's an investor, and when he's on the chair of things, he's chair of the businesses he invests in. And he said, focus, discipline and pace is what he looks for in people that he invests in. I thought, oh, crap. So focus, I think that's such a good word, Kim, because that's I've been really focused, but there's been a lot of self-care gone out the window. No yoga, one walk, no mindfulness, all the stuff that we preach. So I guess I'm saying that's something we have to really plug in. I think you have to diarise it, don't you? Just force yourself to look after yourself, don't you?
And the pink space in the diary is very important.
Pink space.
That's the fun, the joy, the gorgeous stuff. I have lots of pink spaces.
I know.
You're so good at that, though, Caroline. You're so good at that pink space, that indulgence, that luxury. We need to spend more time with you, lovey.
I know, we do.
Yeah, I've done my morning walk and run today. I had a massage yesterday, salon on Monday. You've got to do it. It keeps you going. It's what keeps you going right now.
I know. You're so right. You're so right. I'm going to take that as a big slap on my pink bottom. That's my pink space for today.
That's a very good move. Oh, there's a sideline with that, Penny. In the special interest group.
So Mary, lovely to have you with us. I'm so excited. I've known Mary for a number of years. I admire her massively. She's an amazing lady and incredibly insightful. And this year, she has become an author, and not only that, a seriously best-selling author of this book, Ego. And the strapline is "Get over yourself and lead." And if I just say at the back, it says ego, you can't live with it, you can't live without it. And today we're going to be talking about this because I know since I've sort of attended some of Mary's webinars and had some one-to-ones with Mary's, I've realized when my ego is triggering and when it's really affecting me. So I'm going to really love the fact that we're all going to be chatting with Mary and asking her questions about it and learning more about how to get over ourselves with our ego. And I don't think ego is always something that's deliberately based on, oh, look at me. Ego shows up, doesn't it, in lots of different ways.
Lots of ways.
In lots of ways. So before we really get into some of the questions that I'm desperate to ask you, I know that Kim's got a question, which I think is quite an important question to ask as we start this chat.
Fabulous, thank you. No, I'm so looking forward to today and learning more, Mary. And I know we always have such insightful chats, but I guess for me, it was really interested to know, what was the driver behind the book? What was your vision for it? Okay,
so I think for me, it was a book that I wanted to write and needed to be written for quite a long time, and it did take me about 3.5 years to write it after I started writing it. But I work with leaders like yourself, Kim, and have done over a number of years. And from working with them and learning from their own stories and their old journeys, which are in the book actually as well, and also learning from my own experience as well, there seems to be a common thread which holds us back. And it's not that it holds us back completely, because it's the part of us that we need as well. It's our survival strategy. But that thing that holds us back ultimately is our ego. And so when I started writing, it wasn't necessarily, ego was not the name I had on the book initially, but I just started writing all about the stories that I'd experienced from working with other leaders and my own stories as well. And that's just what emerged, really, is the thing that gets in our way. And it really is about how can we get out of our own way and do that with a certain degree of self-compassion as well. So I think that's what the driver was behind the book. And I think leaders have such a big impact on the workplace, being able to create that psychologically safe workplace where people can feel they can be themselves and share themselves. So to be self-aware and manage your ego is one of the huge contributors to that, really. So that's what's there.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. So, Kim, I think that really answered that question. Carol Ann, you had something you wanted to ask.
I did. Ego often is something people think when you're showing off. And actually, from my experience, ego is comparing your life to someone else and feeling insecure, feeling inferior, doing things that are not worthy of you. And sometimes it's not the big show-off ego, it's actually the ego that pulls the rug out from under you. and minimises your potential.
Absolutely.
So, I think it's given a bad rap, ego, because people think, oh, an egocentric person is somehow a big out there boorish, show.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I totally agree, Carol Ann, and in the first chapter, actually, I give my interpretation of what ego is, which is, I believe it's our survival strategy. So we've learned our ego develops from when we're very young children, and it's our survival strategies that help us live in the world, which is why it's important. We can't just suddenly throw all our survival strategies out the window. But you're quite right. They show up in all sorts of different ways. And it's usually fear induced because it's, we're surviving the fear, we're surviving the anxiety. So I talk about there being overinflated. I talk about ego traps, and they're being overinflated ego traps, which is, and we can both be guilty. We can both hold both. And so if you've got an overinflated ego trap, you're probably going to take up all the space in the room. You want to be seen, you want to be heard. And that's the sort of popular view of what ego looks like. It's all about me, give me all the attention. But then there's the other side of ego, which is what I call the underinflated side of ego, which is about playing small. And that little voice, imposter, I think fits into this category. Definitely an ego trap there. That little voice that's holding us back. And, I was going to do this today, I haven't done it because that voice is saying I'm not good enough, and all that sort of stuff that goes on. And it's all the self-talk that goes in our head. And the other thing that I think is interesting as well is that you can look at it from a gender perspective as well, which is men tend to have, and this is very generalist, I'm just saying it because it's an observation, that men tend to have more overinflated and women more underinflated. That's just how sort of fitting into stereotypical role models has kind of shown up for people. And no, that's not the same for everybody, but that's just an observation, really, that there's some gender.
That's really interesting, Mary. I wonder what the main issues that leaders are suffering with at the moment. What are the issues that leaders are facing right now in this very difficult climate?
Well, I think, I've been working with leaders across different sectors, local authority leaders, leaders in retail, leaders in manufacturing. And depending on their terrain, it is different, because retail has done brilliantly, certainly food retail, which is where I've been focused in this climate, but it's been incredibly hectic and busy for them. Whereas manufacturing have had to close down. They've had to deal with a whole different set of issues and how to manage their staff morale and be able to keep people inspired and motivated on board, and be thinking beyond themselves and what it's like to be in that situation for the people that are working within their organisations. And then we've got local authorities who have, the observations I can make there is they've kind of change there is often painful and difficult. It takes time. There's lots of governance they have to adhere to. And yet within 2 weeks, one organisation talked about the fact they've gone completely virtual, which normally would have taken them about 5 years to achieve. So some massive challenges they're facing. And then as lockdown continues on, it is kind of this thing of, at first there was a bit of a novelty factor to it. Now it's almost become turgid, isn't it? It's like, we just got to keep going through it. And I think a lot of the things we're talking about is, how do I stay sensitive to my people and to the anxiety that my people are experiencing? Organisations are going to have to look at cutting back, job losses, all those sorts of things, which are incredibly challenging and likely to activate our egos, because that will go into survival mode around it.
It's quite a challenge. I think you're right in saying we're almost normalising this horrible period now. We're getting so used to it, we can't see the sunshine over the other side of the rainbow at the moment, So it's a tough call for leaders at the moment.
Yes, I think it is.
Is it hard for leaders that led because they had this sense of power, whether it was where their car was in the car park, or where their office was, or how big their office chair was? I imagine this is a very equalizing experience when everybody at the end of the day is on the end of Zoom. That must quite damage people who relied on ego.
I'd say that's a benefit, actually, that it gets more normalised. Actually, I think if you're in leadership for a status reason, that's
relied on it.
Yeah, I think if you're in leadership for status, that's not really leadership.
Absolutely.
That's about massaging your own ego. And
But
actually,
there must be a lot of them that relied on that, wasn't there?
I'm sure that with how things were before lockdown, there are many organisations where the leader has the biggest office. Some organisations have separate elevators, don't they, to take their executives up to the executive suite. I think that's becoming a more and more outdated view of leadership. Actually.
Yeah. Oh, I couldn't agree. This is why it's
I hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's quite a leveling, isn't it? It's fantastic. Sam, I think your question was sort of preempted by the gender question, wasn't it, that we were going to ask? Anything else?
I'm still fascinated though. I know you've just mentioned the difference between men and women, but in business and in egos, what other differences do you see between the two genders?
What, in terms of ego? So I suppose looking at leadership skills and how ego might impact there are some definite differences in men and women from the relational point of view, that women tend to be naturally much more relational, which again is what's identified as something that's very positive. And it wasn't that it wasn't positive before. We're in a different era now. We're in this era of complex change, navigating, not knowing what's happening, not knowing what's around the corner, being able to build really positive relationships with people, not from a transactional point of view, but just from investing in those relationships, being genuinely interested in your colleagues' potential and concerns that they may have. Women are naturally really, really good at that. And I'm not saying men aren't, but women tend to be. And I think the research identifies that women tend to be. It's just more natural that women be more nurturing in that way. Men are good at setting the clearer vision, and some of the work I do with women leaders is about helping them to be able to create and develop vision, because they're much more nurturing and relational. They're much more with what's going on in the detail now, whereas men tend to be able to state and share their vision and act in a more authoritative way. And what we want is we want both. We want a merging of the two, really, because both sides provide strengths, and that's what diversity is all about. Really, is about making sure that we use everybody's strengths, and that's what makes more effective organisations.
It really fascinates me because humility is one of my biggest values. So I've always been almost like, I don't like egos, I don't want to work with egos, but seeing it as a very negative, like you were saying, Caroline, as this big show-off, egotistical, person is everything I hate about somebody. So this is good to re-educate me on, there's more to an ego than that.
Oh, yeah. Well, we all have one, Sam. We can't live without our ego.
Absolutely.
But it's about, is your ego empowering you or is it holding you back?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's really interesting. So how do we use it to empower? How do we use it to our advantage?
Well, I think, so for example, to be a leader, there's kind of a need to take a stand for something. So you've got to have a belief around something, that this is what I want to create in the world. This is what I believe is right and correct. Now, I would say the sign when you're interacting with somebody that egos are at play is when one person is saying, no, I'm right, and the other person saying, no, I'm right, and they're making each other wrong. So that is a typical kind of ego interaction and an ego battle going on there. However, there is a need to have an ego to say, right, well, I believe really strongly, and this is one of my personal beliefs, in creating organizations that thrive. And I think leaders have a massive role to play in that. Now, I want to be right about that because that's really what I believe in. Someone else might think differently. And in the nuances of an interaction and a conversation, we might need to listen and understand each other better. That's how we navigate our egos. But to give me my drive and motivation, holding that belief and being right about that belief is my ego supporting me to actually take action and do something about it.
Yeah,
so
I love that.
Negative.
Yeah, so if we look at the world as we're in now, and we mentioned it earlier about comparison.
Yeah,
Kim might mentioned it as well. This real challenge that it's hard to avoid that feeling when you go online or of I'm not doing this. How much, that whole saying of comparison is thief of joy. How do we manage our ego around this world, this online world, where we're driven to naturally compete, I suppose, and strive? How do you manage that? How do you manage your ego around comparison?
Well, I think comparison comes from a lack of self-esteem often, that we're not feeling so good about ourselves. So we notice what someone else is doing and think, oh, they're doing so much better, or they look prettier than I do, whatever it is we're comparing ourselves about. And that is definitely our ego activated. And actually, for me, it's about stepping back and just noticing your successes, noticing what you're achieving and what you're contributing, actually. And I don't think we often do that enough. I mean, I'm thinking about someone I was coaching yesterday, actually, and he was talking about some challenges he'd had with his team and how he was taking a different approach, which sounded to me like a much more coaching approach, much more ego-less, actually, from that point of view. And he said, yeah, I'm trying to, and I caught him with the trying word, because what he was failing to see was he was doing it. I'm trying to coach them, he was about to say. Actually, he was coaching them. So I said to him, I'm noticing that you are. So why do you just think you're just trying? And he had a real breakthrough in that moment, because he wasn't allowing himself to see what he was capable of and what he was already doing and what he was already successful at, actually. And I think if we spent more time doing that rather than comparing ourselves to others, that's a way of managing that self-doubt, that inner voice.
I was going to say, it's all about self-doubt, and you have to have self-belief. And the self-doubt is fear that I'm not good enough. And so some people's ego comes out as super sensitivity to criticism. Like, don't say anything bad about me because I might not be able to take it, i.e. my ego may not be able to take it. And yet we all grow from positive feedback. We don't always like it, but it's, your ego can get in the way by being super sensitive.
Yes, that potentially is your ego at play when you're resisting feedback. But I have to say, I'm all about, we're human beings. So, I can think of days where I've had a really tough day and my partner might say to me, Mary, I want to talk to you about something. I'll be like, I just don't know whether I can take this right now. Because so I might be resistant to any feedback he's going to give me at that point because of everything else I'm taking on. So there's something around, being conscious that we are all vulnerable at different times and being able to gauge that and ask permission. I think asking permission to give feedback is really important.
Oh, God. That is one of my unsolicited advice from people when you don't want it. It's like one of my bugbears. It's something people want to do, give advice when you don't really want it or feedback. I think that's a really good point.
It usually starts with, I hope you don't mind me saying, but.
I know.
I do know.
Respect, but, and what they're about to say isn't going to be respectful.
So is that, Mary, is that our egos that are channeling that, that pushback? We're not ready for this feedback, like you just said. We might not be in the mood for feedback.
Well, I suppose, I can't be so categorical as to say that's definitely our egos. But it is looking after ourselves, and part of being effective in our lives is to look after ourselves and recognize what we need at any given time and being able to say, I can't quite deal with that right now.
Yeah. I think, when you said, self-worth and you were saying self-belief, Karen, you said, Sam, earlier, right at the beginning, you said it's really important you have positive, supportive people around you. It's creating that culture, and I know that's a big thing that you're into, Kim, is creating that culture in an organisation where people just constantly affirm each other. Because if you're doing that, you're not scared of having the vulnerabilities and not being right about something. And I mean, I find it in my own family, not my direct family that I've created, but my broader family, where you're just desperate for some validation and some positive feedback. Not everybody's capable of doing it, are they? They don't do it very well. It's
No, I think we've ended up being really bad at giving positive feedback, haven't we? Because we'll kind of say, oh, great job. Look at me, I'm great, I gave feedback. But we're not very specific about what it was that they did that was a great job. But when it's something that we would like them to do differently, oh my goodness, we can do War and Peace. We can tell you what you did, what you said, what it sounded like, what it did for me. And that's why I think we've created an imbalance around feedback. And I guess for me, and Mary, it'd be interested to get your view on this, but one of the things I've found over the years is that if I do give people feedback, once I've checked in with them that it's okay to do so, I start with what I think they were trying to do, because what I've identified over the years is people defend their intention because they weren't trying to get it wrong. They weren't trying to upset or offend or make a mistake. So the first few minutes, they defend what their intention was. So if you start with their intention and you agree that what they were trying to do is exactly what we needed them to do, then when you're giving them feedback to go, it's great that was your intention. Can we just chat a little bit about your impact?
Very
so as
good.
that's what you were trying to do, this is what actually happened. And how can I align you? Then you become their ally instead of their attacker.
Yeah. I think intention versus impact is a great way to balance your feedback, because actually we all have a positive intention. I make that a huge generalized statement, I realize, but I do believe that we, generally speaking, have a positive intention. It's just how it lands sometimes, and we don't appreciate the impact we have. I remember once, this is going back in my history, having an argument with my mother about something. It was at Christmas. I think it was about how to cook the turkey, and we had this massive fallout. And I was being coached at the time, and I took it to my coach, and she said, "Can you not see the positive intention of your mother there?" And it was like really hard for me to see. But actually, usually beneath everything, there is a positive intention. It's important to get to what was that intention that you had in what you did.
Yeah,
it's also.
That Mary, just I don't want to cut you off, but I know we're going to be starting to slow down. I like that. I really like that about that, because most of us get up in the morning wanting to contribute well, don't we? So I think that was an amazing. I hate to cut you off there, Mary. Is it something you can finish in in a minute, less than a minute?
Well, I was just going to build on what Kim was saying, because I'm working with an organisation at the moment on a culture change programme, and we're introducing feed forward. So we don't actually use the word feedback. It's feed forward, and the whole notion of feed forward is about it being a constructive, future-focused conversation where you work with people's strengths and how to build on their strengths. It's really great.
That should be a new language, shouldn't it? I like that as well. That was fantastic. I think, and don't forget that, everyone, anybody watching this, Ego, it is a brilliant book. I've just love it. So congratulations on it, Mary, and we're really proud to have you on our show. So as we close, we're going to have to be very, very quick. We've got about 5 minutes before we close, I think. Sam, what's a tip for this week for our listeners, something that could help them?
I'm going to stick with my theme of earlier. Surround yourself with people that make you feel good, so you can then too make others feel good. So I've got you blondes. You've always got my back. I've got yours. Find someone that's got your back.
Yeah, love it. And Kim?
So mine's going to build on Carol Ann's book last week on the Big You Up book. I've been doing a book this week which is about appreciation and gratitude. So taking a moment to just think about all the things that I appreciate, either in others or even appreciate things I've done. And it's amazing how much more good you see when you do that.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Love that.
Carol Ann?
Well, I would say start to look for the honey in your business. There's certain parts of your business where there is a sweet spot, and concentrate on that. Let go of the stuff now that's not working for you. It's okay to let go and focus on the honey pot. Yeah,
I like my honey pot. I'm going to think about my honey pot. Apart from you're a honey pot, but and Mary, have you got something you could share with us?
Yeah, I think I'm going to build on what Carol Ann was just saying there about a honey pot. I really like that. So my tip for the week is, and as we go through this lockdown, is practice self-compassion. And in so doing, notice your successes. So start focusing on your successes and be compassionate with yourself when things don't necessarily go as you might want them to.
Yeah, brilliant, brilliant. Finally, I've got the last word, which is quite nice on this. I'm going to build on that focus thing that I've really, that challenge of focus, and ask you to think about, and it builds on a bit of what the honeypot thing, but maybe a little bit tougher, a bit more tough love, is what really is going to help your business grow. Because there's an overwhelming amount of choices we could do and things that we get thrown at, and I should do this, I should do that, I should do a podcast, I should do this, I should have a YouTube channel. What really is going to help your business grow, and focus on those things this week. So that was a wonderful show, Mary. You contributed a huge amount to this. Thank you. Anybody? We've got 1 minute left. Anybody got any last thoughts? Anything?
Thank you, Mary. It's a really great subject. I want to get the book.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, wonderful. And so then over to you, Kim. Am I on time to do that with you? Yeah, I think we've got 1 minute left.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. So really enjoyed today's show, Mary. Always insightful. Thank you so much. And Blondes always cheers up my week. We hope everybody listening has also enjoyed it and found it informative. If so, please do join us again next week. We'll be live at 1 p.m. And also, if you'd like to be a guest, if you'd like to share your thoughts and insights with our fabulous audience, then please do get in touch with us at www.businessblondes.tv. And we hope to see you here soon. Have an amazing week all. Take care.